it is interesting to think about, those organizations that take sort of this centralized approach, build it and they will come, versus a groundswell of effort of how do I connect with the business first and understand what are those business values and outcomes and desires that we're trying to drive, and can we then build the platform
Yeah.
to support those things. And I see organizations approaching it from either way. And right there, I don't think there's any single solution. I think, to be honest with you, for most organizations, I don't even think the same approach will work for every domain within
Good
your
point.
business.
Hi, everybody. This is Kaycee, your host for the Data Fabric Show. And with me is a very special guest for today. We have Robin Sutara, who is the Chief Data Officer for Databricks. Robin, please say hello.
Hello, everybody. Kaycee, thank you so much. Lovely to be here. Really excited for the conversation. So, as you mentioned, I'm currently the field CDO with Databricks, and so really excited to join the Data Fabric Show and share a little bit about my career and sort of what I'm seeing across the market with all of our 12,000 Databricks customers.
Well, let's start with that, because I think you actually have a very, very interesting career. So for those who don't know, Robin actually, got started in sort of a little bit of a different path than most of the data professionals out there. So I believe that you actually did something really cool in your first job, and that is you repaired helicopters, right, Robin?
I did. And despite the fact that most people sort of think, oh, this must be the Bay Area and people in their backyard, it was actually the U.S. Army. So I worked on Apache helicopters on the Korean DMZ with the electrical and weapon system. So a little bit of tech, but definitely not your traditional STEM background. So I love to tell people I've now gone Apache helicopter to Apache Spark. And so my career is full circle at this point, I think.
That is very cool. Now, how does one go from repairing Apache helicopters to getting into technology? And you had a storied career of 23 years at Microsoft. Maybe share a little bit about that, Robin.
Yeah, that would be great. So as you mentioned, I definitely started. I went to university for computer engineering. Like some ran out of funds to finish school, and so then it was really like, how do I figure out how to pay for university at some point to go back and finish? So I enlisted in the U.S. Army, did the role with the Apache helicopters, and at the time, I'm going to feel really old saying this, but at the time, Microsoft came out with this great new product called Excel, and nobody really understood what it was going to do or how it was going to empower and enable organizations in the Army. Interestingly, because it's 99% male, they sort of looked at this thing and said, oh, a computer is typing. It's a girl's job. So, Robin, this is your job to figure out this Excel thing.
Oh no!
Absolutely gravitated toward it and said, that's fine. You want me to figure it out? So I'll figure it out. So it was a great opportunity to sort of really learn the power of Excel. I'm sure every finance person out there is raising their hand saying, of course, it's the most powerful database in the entire world. But early days, it was the only database, right? And so
Right.
leveraging Excel and Access, and could we start to build out things like the Apache helicopter maintenance records, things that we were trying to keep track of on paper, could we actually get it digitized and into systems?
Yeah.
So I remember doing that and looking around my platoon and saying, I'm going to go work at Microsoft when I get out. And I'm a 20-year-old kid. And they were like, sure you are. Right.
Sure. Yeah.
So when I got out of the Army, that was absolutely my goal. I wanted to go work for Microsoft. And so everything I was trying to do was to figure out how I was going to do that. I actually went into hardware repair because I had turned screwdrivers in the Army. And so I went and did computer hardware repair with Radio Shack for just a little bit while I did my MCSE at night, and had the opportunity to get an interview with Microsoft based on somebody I met in that MCSE course called me up and said, hey, Microsoft's hiring contractors to come in and support IE5 on Windows 3.1. So now I feel really old. Thank you, Kaycee. I put down one. So
all good. I'm Gen X, so like these things actually mean something to me. Like I still have that disk, that floppy. So
oh my gosh,
that was a big Windows 95. That was a big thing. So yes,
exactly. Do you have your 25 floppy disks to reinstall Windows 95? Always like the first question.
Guilty as charged.
So yeah, I mean, it was a great time, I think, to get into Microsoft, right? Because still early, early days on them doing that transition from primarily being a PC on every desktop in the home use type of environment. And we had just come out with NT3.5, NT4. We were really
Yeah.
trying to figure out how to break into the enterprise, which I think, at the time was really a transformation in the way people thought about computers, because they were either these big room full of machines that only NASA and the government had versus, these small 365s that people had with the dial-up modems at their
Yeah.
house, right? And so we were really trying to figure out how we were going to bridge the gap to enterprise. And so, as you mentioned, like 23 years at the company, and so
Yeah.
obviously, just a phenomenal journey as I think about how technology evolved and allowed us to think about how we unlocked the power of organizations and companies and enterprises to deliver value via technology. I think it was really, really early days. And so,
By the
yeah,
way, like a little bit of trivia for the
okay.
listeners. Why was Microsoft NT called NT? Come on,
This is
Robin.
great.
You gotta get this. Come on.
It was
I don't know if it's urban legend, but
network transport, right? Like, wasn't it the network layer was the unique attribute of
Mhm.
NT4, and so that we were going to be able to connect computers in an enterprise, which is why that's something to do with networking, I thought. Yeah.
So the urban legend, when I worked at Microsoft, and by the way, I don't know if this is true, this is complete urban legend, is that NT were the next two letters after MS. And MS is the obviously abbreviation for Microsoft. So a little bit of urban legend. Don't know if it's
Yeah.
true or not, but I think some of the people we work with have probably never seen Microsoft NT, so this may completely go over them anyways. Uh, but no, that's awesome. And then like you were the chief data officer for Microsoft UK, right?
I
Kind of
was.
as your last role. And then before that you were kind of the COO for Azure Data Engineering. So like definitely kind of got your hands deep into data, into Azure, and so forth. Before kind of moving into Databricks, and everyone who's in data knows what Databricks does and what they do. And so I think one of the things that, I'd love to kind of hear from you, Robin, is in your role as field, chief data officer, maybe tell us a little bit about kind of like how you go around, talking and helping customers with kind of their data strategy. And obviously recently with Gen AI, I think that would be kind of a great place for us to kind of get to know you a little bit better in kind of your current role.
Perfect. Yeah. So the last half of my career at Microsoft was helping Microsoft with their digital and data transformation. Right when Satya Nadella came in and said, "We will be a data first company." What does that look like? And so a lot of those roles, the COO role, the CDO role, were all focused on helping Microsoft become more data driven. So a couple of years ago, Databricks reached out and said, "Hey, we would love for you to come work at Databricks and sort of bring that knowledge, experience, best practices, lessons learned, what worked and what didn't work as you were looking to transform Microsoft. We're trying to help Databricks customers go through similar transformations. And we're finding
Mm,
that we have great tech and a great platform, but tech is only a part of the problem. The other
right.
part of execution at scale is often people or process, change management, organizational design, all of my experience at Microsoft. So Databricks was really looking for, can you come in and help our, 12,000 Databricks customers figure out, once we help them build out this platform, how do they now actually execute and get a data culture and drive sort of data led transformation across their own organization. So yeah, that's what I get to do right now, is travel around the world and help our customers who are using Databricks as their,
Yeah.
as part of their data platform and data solutioning. How do we now help you with the other parts and getting your
Yeah.
organization to actually leverage what you've built in a way that's going to help you drive your business forward?
Yeah. Noble goal,
Uh,
important job. And I think, for a lot of folks out there, and a lot of us are, practitioners, getting a new technology or new product in or new data platform in and getting it, up and running, not only just up and running, but like really getting the value that you want out of it. Sometimes it's a little bit harder than it seems. Sometimes it didn't take 1 month. It didn't take 3 months. Sometimes it takes a while. I think it would be great, Robin, maybe if you kind of, you don't have to mention any names, of course, but like just share some of your experiences because I think it's important for a lot of us out there to know that they're not alone. That
Yeah.
it's. I think a lot of people kind of feel a little bit of guilt, like, oh, maybe it's something. It's me. Maybe it's our organization. We weren't able to, kind of get this up and running. But I know there's just so many challenges with a lot of different circumstances that are beyond your control. Maybe you can spend a few minutes and just kind of share with us kind of what you've seen.
Yeah, so I think it's interesting because there's obviously a varying level of maturity that I see across organizations. Just a few months ago, I met with an organization that said, "Hey, we built this great platform with these data science and Gen AI solutions on top of it, but we can't actually get the business isn't using them, and we can't figure out why." We looked at the data, we figured out that this solution now only takes 5 clicks instead of 27 clicks. Obviously, they should be using it because right,
Clearly,
it will save them so much time. The problem is nobody actually then went and talked to the business to figure out how were they actually right before they ever developed it. It was
yeah,
strictly built off of insights and data at the centralized function as opposed to actually bridging and connecting to the business to understand what does a day in the life look like from a front end business user and why.
yeah,
Right, for me that's basic change management. How are you going to create that desire and that drive and that awareness of what are you trying to solve for and why it's beneficial for them, and how do you bring them along on that transformational journey with you as you build out these solutions. So I think it is interesting to think about, those organizations that take sort of this centralized approach, build it and they will come, versus,
mhm,
sort of a groundswell of effort of how do I connect with the business first and understand
mhm,
what are those business values and outcomes and desires that we're trying to drive, and can we then build the platform
yeah,
to support those things. And I see organizations approaching it from either way, and right there I don't think there's any single solution. I think, to be honest with you, for most organizations, I don't even think the same approach will work for every
mm,
domain within
good
your
point.
business, because you will have more technical savvy sort of parts of your business where you could just build it and they will say, oh, based on this feature, this speed, this capability, this enablement, et cetera. Absolutely, I would use it because
Yeah,
we're technical and we understand how that works and we can get there much faster and enable our people to be able to use it. Whereas
right.
we definitely have legacy organizations in manufacturing and retail and banking, and I could actually list out every vertical, I think, right? Where there's
Yeah.
some part of the business that we've done it this way for 150 years. Like, why are we going to change? There's no reason for us to change the way that we do things. And so, how do you start to build up? And I think that's where every organization, particularly, I think, you mentioned it, the Gen AI hype that we
Yeah,
saw
of
18
course.
months ago, everybody
Yeah.
thought that's going to solve world, right, but that's right. That's going to solve all of our world issues. And that now we're going
Right.
to get everybody to use it. And all it did was introduce some level of complexity, I think, for organizations that now that whole, how do we measure and assess the data maturity of the business users within our organization has shifted because
Yeah.
now natural language. So how do you determine the level of criteria, and how do you rethink not just,
Right.
like you said, the technical platform that we're going to deliver, but how do we rethink the people and the people enablement? I think people is 90% of a digital transformation issue. If you cannot get
I always say
exactly,
tech is easy, people are hard, right? And I
exactly.
think you bring up a good point. Obviously, I work for a vendor, right? Prometheum was the company I founded, so we're obviously pioneering data fabric. But I can say, as vendors, sometimes it's very easy for us to have blinders on, right? We're tech guys. We build tech, and like we think it's amazing, it's awesome. Like, and to your point, like why didn't the business just instantly see how awesome it was? Come on, 27 clicks out of 5 clicks. Clearly, you should be using it. So sometimes I feel like the vendors like us, we have our blinders, and then our customers, the people who we work with and sell to, yeah, they're kind of like us, right? They're,
Yeah.
they're also technologists, and so I see this actually, more often than I like to admit, right? That yes, we met all the technical criteria,
Hmm.
right? Getting the product, and the product technically works and does amazing things. But one of the things I always find is it's not clear to the business why they should change and stop what they're doing. to go do something else, or it's not clear to the business. Is there a big difference between 27 clicks and 5 clicks?
Mm.
Like, and like, will that really significantly change my life? And it may not be, but maybe there's something else. And I think that's one of the challenges as, tech people and our customers that we work with closely, is that bridging that gap remains a gap and doesn't get bridged. And a lot of projects kind of stay in, the testing and the pilot phase for a long time. And you're right. I see Gen AI. It had all this promise, right? Oh, because it's natural language now, you don't have to be a data engineer.
Yeah.
Anyone could just, use natural language prompts and get there. But like with any new disruptive tech, as we've kind of seen for a while, and I'm not talking about Microsoft NT, of course, is that, there's always an element of change management, of re-education, of maybe even habit breaking. And I would say that part is probably just as important, if not more, than the technology, the actual digital part of the digital transformation, right? And so wanted to, number one, acknowledge that. That's something that I see all the time as well. How, for the listeners out there, like, do you think, what have you seen as kind of the best way to kind of help conquer that? Is it bringing in SI consulting partners? What have you seen to be effective, Robin?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I
Yeah,
capture a little bit of what you
yeah,
said, because tech is moving so quickly. I think Gen AI
yes,
showed us that, if we look at, I sort of alluded to, big mainframes taking up whole rooms to PC computers. I mean, that was decades worth of transformation, right? That happened, that people had time to absorb and figure out what it meant and learn, sort of on the go. Internet is another one. It took decades before it became
yes,
common mainstream. And now I don't know
yeah.
that my children couldn't imagine living without the internet, right? Like
It,
it
it
just
actually came from the U.S. Army, right? It was the ARPANET, right? Yeah, right. Look
exactly.
at that.
Exactly, right. But it definitely, I mean, it wasn't common. And now I think the
Yeah,
introduction of Gen AI 18 months ago, right, ChatGPT became this instant thing that everybody could get their hands on. And it was
yeah,
accessible in a way
right,
that you didn't have to be NASA or a US Army
right.
technologist to figure out execution and implementation. And so I think when you think about some best practices on how to do that, there's sort of, a couple of ways. One is I think you absolutely need to gravitate toward this. There is a desire in the business to be leading edge and to use cool
Yeah,
tech. Yes, it may not be everybody. I think I once did a panel with the CDO of WPP, Di Mays, who's a fabulous resource, who has done some great AI and data academies around this on enabling people and driving change management. So, hi, Di. I think right, she sort of has really said, look, your job is not going to be displaced by AI. Your job is going to be displaced by people who can use AI. So if we
mhm,
take that mentality of, we know tech and innovation is happening at a pace that is no longer decades, it's weeks and months. And so one, how do we build a platform that's going to be capable of allowing us to stay on top of the transformation without having to re-platform, which is, I think Databricks is a great solution for that, and we can talk about that. But the other part is, how do you think about change management enablement of the people to keep up with the technical changes? Because you are going to be now creating net new solutions for the business, for your customers, et
yeah,
cetera, at a pace that is no longer years. Or, I mean, at Microsoft, we used to operate right on 6-month roadmaps. That is no longer
right,
going to be the norm. It is
right.
transformation is happening so much more quickly. So you almost have to think about, how do we create a culture across the organization that is adaptable to taking on this new tech as we roll it out, and that has to be in ways that's consumable to them. So you talked about natural language. So how do we make sure that they have an interface that, regardless of what's going on in the back end to empower and enable them, we keep some level of consistency for them. I've seen
Hmm.
some great ISV solutions that have come out, like, how do we use an Excel front end with a Databricks and Azure or AWS backend so that we can
Yeah.
change the back and optimize and do all those speeds and feeds and technical capabilities and enablement, or pull out this old model that's now out of date and put in a new model against the machine learning capabilities that we have within the organization. I don't have to retrain every business user because I'm doing
Right.
that if we can figure out how to, bridge the gap, I think. And that I think those organizations are doing really well are thinking about how do we create business user enablement and capabilities that
Mm,
their day-to-day function isn't changing every 2 weeks, where they're having to
right.
relearn or repivot, which used to be the old way that we did it. We would create a new tool or a new system, and we'd
Yeah.
expect them to sort of be able to use it. So I think that's first, is how
Yeah.
are you
Yeah.
creating simple, consistent business user interfaces so that regardless of how the tech is evolving so quickly on the backside, they don't sort of see that. I think the second thing is getting the business involved in the discussion, right? Like you said, you're having conversations with technologists. I'm having conversations with technologists because we come at it from a tech perspective. The problem is, I often see in the business views their own internal tech teams as just being, either the blocker or the backlog, right, for the features and functions. Those
Yes.
organizations that are doing really well have figured out a way to bring the business into those conversations. So the minute they start
Mhm.
saying, well, I need, real-time streaming with X millisecond of latency, you say, whoa, 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 why?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I
Tell
keep
me what you're
telling
trying to do. Yeah.
Exactly. I keep telling my team, act like it's a 2-year-old. Why?
Yeah. Yeah.
Why? If you're telling me
Yeah.
you want to do a Teradata migration because you're a cloud first strategy, why? Why do you
Yeah.
think we're going to be a cloud? Oh, you want to save money. Now that's something now that we can
Okay.
operate toward, right?
Right.
And so for most organizations, if you can ground it back into how you're going to make money, how you're going to save money, how you're going to empower your employees, or how you're going to deliver better services and products to your customers, that's where you
It
need to be
usually works.
grounding. Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
So
That
you
usually
ground
works.
your change management in those aspects, and then I
Yeah.
can almost guarantee you will get the attention of the business to say, "Oh, you're a bottling company, and I can help you optimize the production line by X percentage so that you can deliver X millions of bottles to your customers in Y amount of time, which is a delta of this cost savings." The
Right.
right, that VP is going to care about that bottom line P&L. And so we have to get technologists to start talking about the capabilities and the Gen AI solutions and the platform solutions that we're building, how it's going to do those things.
We talk about Gen AI, and I think everyone has obviously used ChatGPT, and obviously there's different LLMs out there as well. So I think one of the things that's been very interesting is I would say better part of the last 18 months, the focus has really been on the LLM, right? The focus has really been on these services. And what I've started to see recently in the last 3 months is people are starting to realize, well, it's about the data. If the data is not in good shape or accessible or accurate, you're going to get some pretty wonky results, and you're going to get them really fast, and the LLMs always sound very, very convincing, right? It's
Mm.
like I sometimes I wonder if my 6-year-old is spending way too much time on ChatGPT because he gets more convincing every day why he needs something new. But that's actually something that I want to bring up, because I think we kind of overlooked that. Everyone kind of just thought you just simply add an LLM to your data warehouse or your database and you call it a day.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing that. I don't know about you. What I'm actually seeing is that. This is actually very interesting. Gartner actually did a survey, right, where they actually asked a bunch of CIOs, like, "Hey, what's the biggest challenge, right, to implementing Gen AI?" And the number one reason, where 49% of response, and this is the most important, was data accuracy, reliability, and transparency.
Mhm.
Number one reason, like
Yeah.
almost half said, like, that's the number one reason. And so it's got nothing to do with, quote unquote, does it work? As, can I trust it? Can I see where it comes from? Can I know how you actually put it together? Right. So I think
Yeah.
this is an area that I'm seeing a lot more focus now. When people are talking about Gen AI, the data teams, I think, went from let's just get anything with an LLM in here as quickly as possible to now the conversation, whoa, before we do, tell me why I can trust the output, right? Tell me why we can trust where the data comes from. So this is something I'm seeing a lot. I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on this, Robin, as well.
Yeah, I think you bring up a great point. I mean, right, ChatGPT came out, everybody thought LLMs were going to solve everything, right? And then we sort of said, oh, now we need to hire things like prompt engineers, although nobody could really define what was prompted. What was a prompt
All I
engineer?
knew is they were making a lot of money. They're going to
They
make a
were.
lot of money.
Absolutely. I almost decided I should become a prompt engineer and
There
restart
you
my
go.
career. Right. And then we sort of said, no, RAG's going to be the solution for everybody. I think exactly what you're pointing out. Like, look, this ecosystem is changing really, really quickly. I think now we talk
Yeah.
about agentic and compound AI systems. I mean, at
Yes.
Databricks, we definitely talk about no singular model is going to solve your business problem. It's got to be a compound system where it's going to have traditional AI and machine learning on top of the generative AI capabilities that are evolving so quickly. But I think there's two issues that you bring up with organizations saying, okay, 18 months ago we said, I want to talk to my data. Let's just throw a chat bot on top of it and on the warehouse and it'll solve all things for us. And then, ooh, wait a minute, that's not exactly how we define revenue. Like,
Why are they coming up with these crazy outputs? What's going on?
Exactly. Why is my customer base now, all of the Middle East when we don't even do business outside of the US? Like, right.
Yeah.
I think there were definitely some issues that sort of arose that we realized like, oh, wait a minute, there's a lot of fundamentals and foundations that need investment. So 18 months ago, I actually saw lots of organizations having conversations, right, or bringing me in to have conversations with their CEOs and their boards to say, let's talk about what is generative AI, right? It's a statistical probability. How do we talk about that?
Yeah.
And really what that means as far as what we need to have in place for the foundations around quality data, accessible data. The other thing that has quickly evolved that has created, I think, as well, to your point, is the regulatory and legislative requirements, right? In the US, we don't know exactly what that's going to look like now with the election being decided and what will happen in January. I think we're all reading the headlines around that. But I mean, the EU has the EU AI Act, which has already been, approved and enforced. So if you're doing global, many US states are actually enacting while they wait for federal legislation on. So there are some real concerns about what data am I using, who has had access to it, what, not just the quality requirements, but what models is it feeding into, what are the transformations that are happening to it, what are the algorithms of the models, what's the weighting. So I think, from the Databricks perspective, we're really thinking about, okay, that means that you will not be able to use a single proprietary black box model and be able to pass that off with the regulators or the legislators to say, okay, I use data set X, it fed into this black box model that we don't know what happened to it, and now it fed out to product Y. I think for most organizations,
not okay. Yeah.
it's not going to happen at all, right? And
Yeah.
so you really have to have that end-to-end lineage to say, okay, what were the data sets? What were all the transformations that happened? Where did we land it? Who had access to it? What were the transformations and the weightings that we used in the models? And in these complex systems, you will have some accountability with these proprietary models, but it will be part of the solution, the things that your teams are building around the edge. Which means more and more organizations are starting to think about, do we have the right data foundations and fundamentals in place?
Correct.
And for most organizations, I have to admit, the quality issue, you are never going to solve your data quality issue holistically across in the entire organization. So the thing is, how do you approach it from what's the business value use case I can deliver today with the most trusted data? And do I have the right amount of oversight, insight to that end-to-end lineage? Do we have, monitoring and controls around it? Do we have great ISV and partners like Prometheus to help us now make sure that we have those right controls in place to be able to make it explainable, make it as transparent as possible? Because that, I think, is for any organization, as you're waiting for, you can't wait for regulation to be decided or legislation to be decided. So how are you making sure that the system can support you today to innovate for your customers and for your clients and your citizens, while making sure that you have those foundations in place so that you can say, this is the data we use, this is the quality attributes that we have on the data and the observability that we have to be able to see if it strays. This is our process, which again goes back to people and process, right? Are people entering in quality data? Do we have the right processes in place? Do we have the right people with the right knowledge? Because I can't tell you how many many times my daughter says, well, I entered it in ChatGPT and they said in the 1980s, this happened. And maybe I was alive. And I am telling you that did not happen that way. Right. And so if you think about it from an organizational perspective, if we just have people blindly accepting what the models are putting out, and so how do we make sure we're enabling and training people to operate around the tech that we've built, so that all of the great insight and knowledge that they have about the business and our customers and all of those things, they're applying that as a rational validation, to help us as we continue to evolve the tech to be better. But tech will never solve all of your quality issues,
Right.
or all of your process issues, or all of your people enablement issues. And so I think it's an and.
It absolutely is. By the way, it's Prometheum, not Prometheus,
Oh,
but
sorry.
because we both lived in the east side of Seattle. I'm gonna let that slide.
Thank you.
No, but no, you bring up a good point. In a way, I almost feel like we've come full circle, right? Because pre-Gen AI, like we were always talking about like governance, right? Data governance was super important, and the reason why I started Prometheum was I felt like analytics and governance were really two sides of the same coin, right? You really if you can't tell people where the data come from, why you can trust the lineage, have a transformation that actually happened, they're always going to wonder, they're always going to guess, they're always going to fight over who's at the right version of the data, which you see all the time. And so it was a well-known problem. We've all dealt with it. We were all dealing with it. I think for some people think that magically LLMs and when ChatGPT came, like that all just goes away. Right. And if anything, I think no, I think it actually brings it into the center and the forefront more often, because now you see those mistakes happen way, way faster at a much greater volume. Whereas before, we took time to make sure the data was right. We took time to document, to make sure the lineage was there. And yeah, that meant you weren't getting your answers in 2 seconds. It could mean you're not getting your answers for a couple of weeks sometimes, or months. Mm-hmm. But when you did, it was going to be right. And I think with ChatGPT, with other LLMs, what it's done is it's created this fantastic self-service experience. It's created what I like to call kind of that single persona experience, right? Where, before, and for a lot of times, like, there's a reason why data teams exist. We're reason why they have a governance team, you got data engineers and analytics engineers, data analysts, et cetera. Everyone has a part to play in this very, very complex pipeline. But when you have an LLM that kind of basically accelerates and forces this, anything good and bad gets accelerated and gets brought to the forefront. So I look at it differently. I actually look at it as, if anything, if you really cared about governance and you actually cared about data quality and you cared about accuracy, I think LLM is a good forcing function, because I think that gave consumers kind of a taste of what that experience could be like. And I feel like we should never let that go, because if one good thing came out of it is, like, it is a much better experience. Right? It's empowering, right? Mm-hmm. That self-service. But we got to come full circle and make sure all the stuff that we were doing that unfortunately, a lot of times gets abandoned, right? This now becomes more and more important. So hopefully people see it as an opportunity. I certainly do. I certainly think now you care about things like data contract. Now you care about things like having proper metadata, proper annotation, right? Because that active metadata actually can become a very, very powerful way to do your prompt engineering. And so if you've got bad active metadata, you're going to get some pretty horrendous results. So hopefully people are now seeing the correlation.
And I do think tech is evolving to take advantage of that, right? I mean, at Databricks, we're thinking of it. So a majority of organizations have now implemented some level of a lakehouse, right? Which was 10 years ago what Databricks was sort of talking about. How do you bridge the gap between your data warehouse and your data lake so that you can do BI and AI on both? Today, now it's more about how do we leverage generative AI in the platform to do more data intelligence platform, which means things like manual tagging of metadata. Could we leverage LLMs to make a recommendation to your people to say, this is how, right, this is what this column represents, or this is what this table represents, right? Can you as an individual validate it? And we're finding for lots of organizations, that capability is now saving you a ton of time on some of these
Totally.
foundations and basics that you were talking about.
Totally.
Now you have super strong metadata that understands the semantics of your business. So things like having an AI BI or a natural language interface for your business users that don't necessarily want to code in Python or SQL. How can you make sure that your data engineers and your data scientists and your data analysts are focusing more on those value outcomes and less on some of this administrative tasks that we could, leverage the technical capability. So while it'll never solve all of it, I do think tech platforms are getting smarter and better to
Right.
be able to help teams get to that end state you were talking about even faster. So it's not taking you 4 weeks as a, IT team to be able to deliver against that. Like, yes, you're the data owner, as the steward. Let me look at it across the platform and figure out how do we come back to you to tell you what business semantics this data represents so that you can validate it as the business. And then we can know, because we have a full end-to-end lineage, we know exactly what reports it's feeding into, what data products it's, propagating, et cetera. And we can start to then really trust the data because the entire business is trusting this data. And so if it's not right, we're not focusing, again, like we talked about, you're never going to solve all data quality issues for all of your historic and legacy data that exists across your organization. So
and by the way, if you try, your people will quit on you.
Exactly. They will go find a prompt engineering role, right, and make a lot more money. So
yeah.
How do we help them focus on the data assets that make the most sense for your business? And that's where I do think, generative AI and LLMs has just allowed organizations to solve some of those problems at a pace that wasn't possible before.
Yeah, and I think again, a lot of people like to focus on like kind of doom and gloom, like, oh, you got to watch out for this could go wrong. Like I'm always much more fascinated by the opportunity, right? The what if that can happen. Like for example, like one of the things that, and I'm not going to take credit. I got this from a customer the other day I was talking to, and they were saying, look, I think one of the things that would be really cool with Gen AI and like a data fabric is that we have so many great platforms in our environment. We've got Databricks, we have Snowflake, we have AWS stuff, we have some on-prem stuff. Wouldn't it be cool if the LLM kind of sees the world through not separate silos, but kind of a single unified view of where the fabric comes from, but is intelligent enough to know for this question, for this use case, please execute, right, in Databricks, right? Because we know like within Databricks, you're going to get either the best performance or actually the best model within Databricks to actually then deliver the results. And for this one, go somewhere else. And then when I thought about that, I was like, well, that's actually pretty cool because I think for the most part, we kind of end up, it's very, very easy, right? As vendors, we end up with my platform is better than your platform and duking it out for platform supremacy and not realizing with a lot of customers sometimes it's not possible. And so if you are going to have distributed platforms, which a lot of enterprises actually always have, the value isn't trying to pit one against the other. Value is like knowing which platform is the best for the right job. And I'm actually very optimistic. I hope that is some place that we can actually get to, because I think that would actually introduce like a whole new level of efficiency and innovation.
Yeah, and having interoperability between them, right? Like you said, how do we help make sure that the ecosystem is as open as possible to support, federating against heterogeneous environment? Because I don't know, similar to you, I don't have a single customer that's homogeneous across, right? And so, and as we talked about, like tech is moving so quickly. If you build your platform around a singular solution today, I worry for you in 6 months because it will be completely different. And so it's almost, I hate to use plug and play. Half of your audience may not even know what that means, but how do we think about models and Gen AI in more of a plug and play type of environment? And that requires having an open ecosystem that allows you to interoperate between clouds, between models, between platforms, right? Between warehouses, et cetera.
I think the millennial or Gen Z speak would be modular. Instead of plug and play. I've been educating myself on Gen Z speak every single week. So yeah, I'm trying to be hip here. I think that's thank you. I think for bringing that, because I think a lot of folks and we've seen this. a lot of customers always think that their problem lies in the platform, and if they just migrate from one platform to the next, like what you said earlier, like just moving from Teradata to Databricks, like, why do you think that's really going to solve all your problems? And you hear this all the time, like, oh yeah, our data quality is horrible, our data governance is horrible. It takes too long for us to build data sets for the business. We can't support ad hoc queries. But if I just moved to one single platform, everything's going to be great. And like, well, no, not really. If you've got 5 million crappy tables, it doesn't matter. Like if you went from like 5 platforms into one, you still have 5 million crappy tables, right? If you are still bottlenecked on like only one person who knows, right, the semantic layer of the business, who knows which tables are good quality, which are bad, you still have that bottleneck. It doesn't matter. And so I think to your point, right, I think understanding kind of these business challenges and the business goals is super important. And it's not about kind of like putting everything into just one and saying that's instantly going to solve the problem. And again, I think with Gen AI, these things just get faster. They get surfaced a lot faster, right? So I'm hoping that with Gen AI, with the advancements in new technologies, Databricks and Prometheus with Data Fabric, that people get to iterate faster, right? So the quality of the data products that we create should be better, and they should come out sooner because we should be able to get the feedback, right, a lot faster.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm looking at and what I'd be interested in. I don't know if you saw this recently, Robin, but I think over the weekend, Etisham Zaidi from Gartner, I think he published this like kind of AI readiness journey report from Gartner about like what it takes to be ready for AI. And I think one of the things that talks about is kind of the need to be modular, right? And that is, I think if you start going down this whole path of AI, Gen AI, it's not enough to just look at structured data. It's not enough to look at semi-structured data. You also have to look at unstructured data. And so I think that brings in yet another layer of complexity to the game. But I think to his point, which I thought was very on point, was I think that modularity, combined with, the ability to stitch together kind of where the data came from, its lineage, how it's put together, transformation, so forth, is going to make that trustworthiness and that accuracy a lot better so that people don't think it's a black box. Because again, that's still 49% why people are saying they're not deploying Gen AI.
Yeah, we have that same perspective, right? I mean, if you look at the where Databricks platform has gone, I think we're absolutely aligned with that. It has to, figure out how to stitch all of those complex existing ecosystems together in a way that allows you to be modular and evolve as tech evolves.
Yeah. Now, Databricks has been one of those, I guess, maybe from the outside looking in, one of the big, I think, beneficiaries of the whole, AI push and the huge wave of adoption for AI. Maybe you can kind of comment a little bit on that, because I think not everyone has, a lot of people have tried, but not everyone has been that successful in kind of, being part of that AI rush and being able to capitalize on that. Maybe you can kind of tell us a little bit of why you think, that's actually been kind of a great boon to the business of Databricks.
Yeah, I think so. Databricks is a 10-year-old company. I think we had the advantage in that we started on the AI ML side, right? Our 5 founders were actually PhDs in data science, trying to solve big data problems, creators of Spark, right? Which was really about how do you process big data at the speeds that you need to do AI. So it was really funny because I remember being on the Microsoft side when we did the first party agreement with Databricks and sort of having that conversation. It was very much like we're the we started in AI, but we're the data and AI company, right? And then now, sort of with this AI boom, it's like, no, we're the data and AI company. Like this is where it's our roots, and it's where we started from and grounding. So I think that we absolutely had the advantage, unlike some organizations that started as just the data warehousing sort of side, where you're trying to now integrate AI into it, because we started as an AI platform. I think that definitely has become obvious to the market and to the ecosystem on just the power of, because we were grounded in AI and ML from our very inception as a company. It's definitely and then expanded into the data capabilities. I think that makes a difference in what you see today.
Got it. Got it. And as you guys start embracing that, do you guys see Gen AI as kind of an accelerant to kind of drive more adoption? Because I think traditionally people have always associated Databricks more with that's for the data scientists, right? It's you're dealing with Spark, that's for machine learning and so forth. Has Gen AI as LM kind of brought kind of more, I guess non-technical user base and increased kind of more demand uh, for a platform like Databricks from what you today?
Yeah, I think absolutely. So a couple of years ago, we did the acquisition of Mosaic ML, which was really about how do we, cost optimize large language models for organizations that didn't have these millions to be able to build sort of their own. How do you make it more accessible and easily accessible? So it was really still about the data scientists, but how do you help them be more cost efficient and effective? But I think that then as we sort of saw the evolution with ChatGPT and just the accessibility and the demand and the desire and across the business for non-technical users to be able to leverage these capabilities, I think has really allowed us to take that Mosaic ML acquisition, integrate it into the platform in a way that allows data scientists to be more effective, but now also has created things like integration with Unity Catalog so that you have that end-to-end business semantics, because we can run generative AI on the data that exists in the platform and make recommendations for you on quality, on what's being used in what capacity, on recommendations to your data engineers on optimization of pipelines. How do we recently announced last June on how do we leverage sort of that data intelligence capabilities now to help automate pipelines. So all of the painful things that organizations have struggled with to get to the data foundations in place, we're now thinking about how do we use Gen AI and sort of this evolution of ML in these compound systems, to be able to automate some of these tasks to help organizations be more effective with the limited amount of talent that they have. You don't want to invest all of your data engineers into constantly creating and cleaning up pipelines as tech gets better. And so how do we help make the tech more intelligent to help organizations? And so I do think while we grew up in traditional data science, we did the expansion about 5 years ago into the data warehousing because we knew we had to bridge the gap between data engineering and data science capabilities. And now I think you're seeing that data intelligence really trying to figure out where do we allow the platform to automate as much as possible, and then allow the great talent across an organization to focus on the business problems and less about management of the platform.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. Robin, I think I can keep talking to you for a long time. Lot of cool topics. Love your point of view, and I'm gonna end on one final question, and that is, can you still fix an Apache helicopter?
Give me a screwdriver. I'll be right there.
Robin, thank you so much for joining us on Data Fabric Show. Absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed your insights. Next time in Seattle, I'm gonna definitely give it a call and love to meet up for a cup of coffee. Everyone, my name is Kaycee, live founder for Prometheum. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Data Fabric. And again, the wonderful Robin Sutara. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.